when I wrote that first half, it was like I was just the happiest I've ever been in my life. And then the second half, I was the most depressed, the most heartbroken, and I was sick for like 6 months of the rest of the album. So you can kind of hear it towards the end where I'm like, please shoot me. Like,
Hi, I'm Alia and I'm here with Conan Gray for Enemies in Conversation series. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good. So we're here today to talk about Found Heaven, your third album. How does it feel to have it all done?
It feels like a relief, and it also feels like now that I've finished it, I'm looking back at it and I'm like, damn, was it that serious? That's kind of how I feel about it. Yeah.
I thought a good place to start would be with the title track, the first track, because I feel like it really so it's a really bold opening, and it sort of introduces us to this new sound that you have. How did that song come together?
So Found Heaven was the first song that I wrote for the album. I wrote it, kind of the beginnings of it, right off the tail of my last tour. And to me, it was kind of the thesis statement of the whole album, because it's a song about finding your own sense of happiness, and even if it disappoints everyone in your life or disappoints all the listeners or something, just like, you have to do what you want to do or else you end up wasting your entire life, which sucks. That's much scarier than just dying. And so, yeah, it's very much kind of like set the pace for me. But I wrote the song and then I actually added the intro when I finished the album, because I was like, all right, I have one last thing to say. And so, yeah, it just felt like the whole album in one song.
You mentioned the intro, and the intro is really, really like bold and dramatic. Where did that come from?
Well, I was raised really religiously, and I think people maybe might take the song as like a religious song, but it's not necessarily about like Christianity, or like about slandering Christianity, I guess. It's much more about, having to live your life. Like you have to live your life on your own terms, because then you'll waste everything. And the intro is to me just saying like, okay, if there was no God above us, if there was no one watching, how would you live your life? And to me, that is reality. And since that's my reality, how am I going to act right now? And it's my third album. I never thought I would ever be able to make 3 albums. So it's kind of, with this album, my main assignment was to surprise listeners and surprise myself.
And what made you decide on Found Heaven as the title for the album?
I think it was just kind of one of those things where, since it was the first song, I just kind of knew. And I think it kind of defines, Found Heaven to me is like a little bit of a double entendre, because, found heaven, like, find your own happiness, find your own sense of self, your own sense of heaven. But also Found Heaven could also be used in the terms of like, oh, grandpa has found heaven, like he died. And this album was like a death to me. It was like, it was about my first time falling in love, but also my first breakup, and about all these crazy emotions all around it. And I felt really different when I was making the album, so I wanted a title that encapsulated a little bit of death.
And you've also mentioned that you like putting sort of like unhappy emotions inside very like upbeat music. How do you approach that from like a writing standpoint?
I don't really know how to write happy lyrics at all. So it's not a tactic, it's just how I've always been. I do think that the best songs of all time, even the best love songs of all time, have a little bit of sadness in them. I think someone once told me, you can't pour honey on sugar. And it's like, you have to have a little bit of both, because that's life, Every good thing has a little bit of bad. Every bad thing has a little bit of good.
And on this album, there's a real like 80s feel. I was kind of wondering what kind of pulled you in that direction. Did you have any like influences or reference points?
I didn't listen to 80s music till I was an adult, because I wasn't raised on it. I was raised mostly by my mom, and we only listened to Christian music. And then with my dad, it was just Eminem. So I wasn't gonna make Eminem music, so I really like had only a few options, and I discovered like the 80s and the 70s, in my 20s so far. And so when I was making the album, I was just really obsessively listening to music of that era. I think also because it was a deeply emotional time. I kind of was almost like hiding from reality. I like didn't listen to a song from the 2020s during the making of this album because I was like scared to even face that I was existing in public. Yeah.
And the sounds on this album, I think, it just sounds like the instrumentals just sound so huge and loud, and it's pretty different from your first two albums. Was there like any reason why, were you thinking about like sort of turning away from what you did before?
I definitely knew I wanted the album to sound different because my first two albums I kind of think is like siblings. Like they very much are the natural repetition of each other. But this album, I just wanted to do the last thing that I would have thought I would do, and I think also I was feeling a lot of brand new emotions, and when you feel brand new emotions, you don't know how to feel about them, so the album had to feel different to me.
And you worked with a lot of like legendary producers and songwriters on this. What was it like working with Max Martin?
A massive learning experience. I mean, I learned ungodly amounts about songwriting, and he's obviously the greatest producer of all time, so it was really, really special, and very, some things were so different than I was expecting, and some things were exactly what I was expecting. It was just very cool, and I don't know, I learned so much, and he is such a great producer because he has such a love for for making music. Like, that's why he is who he is, because he's fucking obsessed with pop music.
And you knew him before you worked on this?
Yeah, so it was kind of nice too, because it wasn't like a nice to meet you, like let's make a song. It was a nice kind of like natural thing. I'd gotten to know him over a few years, and by the time we made music, it was a super fun, just kind of like friendly situation. And the whole process of making the album was different even than other times that I'd like co-written with people. Normally you like sit down and write a song. You're like, okay, today we're gonna write a song. But with Max, it was much more like I'd text him and be like, hey, I have this like song idea, and he'd be like, oh, cool, like I've had this melody in my head for a few days, like I wonder if we could like squish them together. And then like we'd spend like a few weeks like FaceTiming each other with like random little like, what if it was like da 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 da, like, and then by the time after those 2 weeks, we'd have a song that we like wrote subconsciously, which is really fun and very much not how it normally goes.
Were you writing because you were touring for almost a year straight? Were you writing while you were touring, or?
Yeah, so I wasn't. None of the songs that I wrote while I was on that tour made it onto the album, but it definitely informed this album, because I would go after the shows. I was playing all these theaters, and in all of these theaters, they have a grand piano in the basement, always, because they have, concerts there with orchestras and classical music. And so I would always ask, can I go to the basement and play your piano? And they'd always be like, yeah, sure. So I'd go down there and I'd write. And I think kind of being on tour and being in that headspace of like live music, it kind of informed me how I wanted to make this album. And also I'd written a song on my last album called Memories, where I'd kind of come up with this like weird voice that I really liked to sing in, and then I kind of just like kept that for the rest of this album.
It's interesting because Memories is like a song that's known for like how much it like builds towards the end, and there's a lot of that on this album. A lot of songs that start off like slow, it's just like a piano, and then they sort of like build to this release. Was there like something specific you were trying to capture with that?
I don't know, it's just kind of how I write. I've never, I think I always just kind of do that. I don't know why. To be honest, I'd try to give you an intellectual answer. I wouldn't be able to give you one. I just do it. But I also think I like to I don't know, I like very much while I'm writing a song, like, will get bored and then like want to just, I'm like, okay, now I'm going here. Like, just like maybe just boredom. Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about your music videos. I know that you're really hands-on with them. How did you sort of come up with the concepts for them?
I really miss kind of like the music videos that I grew up watching. I don't think people really realize this, but music videos are dying. They're like fully a dead art form currently because of short form media. No one's investing in music videos, so it's like very much not, they're just not good anymore, which sucks because I love music videos and people, I feel like music listeners love music videos, but it's just not as useful of a marketing tool as it was like during the MTV days. So I was like, I just want to make at least like 2 music videos for this album that just feel like a music video you would have watched back then. It was a huge challenge and I really pushed myself to do something weird and I learned how to dance, which I wasn't expecting. I was like, what? But I think also it was just like, this whole album was a practice of like, what are all the things that I never thought I would do and what would happen if I just did them and saw? Because what a like huge pleasure it is to have been able to make 3 albums and I have all these opportunities, so why not just like try them and see? Because I think I'd kick myself if I didn't ever like, if I never even tried to dance one time, I'd be pretty mad at myself. If I never tried to like make a full pop album even one time, I'd be pretty mad at myself. So this album is like all the things that I'm like, I just have to try this before I die.
And I was gonna ask, how did you choreograph the dances yourself?
So the first one for Never Ending Song I didn't, but then for Lonely Dancers I did choreograph myself. I was working with this guy named Max Vam, and I do have like weird dance moves that I just kind of do naturally. I think everyone has like their own weird way of dancing, and I wanted to make dances that weren't like, I didn't want you to watch them and be like, wow, he's a dancer, you know, like, because that's not how I dance, you know, it's like, that's not, I wanted to make dances that felt very like how someone would dance in their bedroom alone, because that's how I dance to music, so yeah.
I think I heard you say that like a music video for Never Ending Song was sort of inspired by a trip to Tesco.
I've been saying way too fucking much in these interviews. It's so bad. Yeah. It was inspired by a trip to Tesco. I mean, I've already said this, so I don't know why I wouldn't say. When I was seeing this person, our first date happened in a grocery store, so I thought it would be pretty funny to put it in a music video. But I also think the grocery store is kind of a magical place. It's like truly liminal. Like when you go outside, you're like, what the fuck? Like what just happened? You know, it's like, it's this place where like time freezes, everything's manicured, people have to act a certain way, and it's just a very, very, I don't know, I love grocery stores. I
was asking also because we're in London now, so I was just
Yes.
wondering kind of if there were any other ways that like London sort of informed the album.
London informed the album a lot. I wrote a lot of the songs about London and about my time here in London. I think that like British pop, and especially British pop from the 80s and the 70s, were a huge influence on this album, and I spent so much time here that it was just gonna leak into the music. And I also thought, you know, like I'm like singing in a fully like British accent in some of the songs because I think it's funny, like, like it makes me smile. There's no like other reason. I mean, I think also there's like a mentality here that's like British people actually don't take themselves too seriously, and I like that. It reminds me of home, and I'm a very sarcastic person and like a very kind of crass person, and I think the album is pretty sarcastic and pretty crass, and like I'm having fun. I'm just joking around. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does feel fun, and like it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's dramatic and exaggerated at parts.
Yeah.
And there's like moments of darkness with like some moments of like real lightness together.
Yeah, and I think like the very, very last song that I wrote for the album is a song called Alley Rose, and I originally wrote it because the song was originally called Abbey Road. Because I was like, I'd been dumped and I was in London and I was heartbroken, and London is a great place to be heartbroken. It's the best because it's like you can be so miserable here and like really seep in it. And I was so sad. I was like, oh, like London. And the song was originally like, oh, where'd you go Abbey Road? But then I was like, I can't fucking name this like the best song on this album after the greatest album of all time. That'd be really dumb. So then I had to like come up with a kind of like name that sounded like Abbey Road, and so that's how Alley Rose came to be.
That one reminded me a lot of Elton John.
I'm glad you say that because it definitely was inspired a lot by Elton. I mean, I love Elton and very British, very British man. And I think, yeah, I definitely, when I was writing the song, was thinking about Elton. And I think also, I like songs where like you don't really know what they're about. You know, you hear the phrase Alley Rose and you're like, what does that even mean? But everyone knows. Everyone knows. Like, you just know what it means. You know, I love that about music.
You've also said that you have a favorite song on the album. Is it Alley Rose?
I do have a favorite song on the album. It is Alley Rose. It was the last song that I wrote for the album. And I think it definitely was like, when I wrote it, I was like, thank God. Like, I was like, the album's done. Because I have that with every album. And it's super funny because it's always the last song that really, really informs me of the whole album. And it's always the first song and the last song that define everything that happens in between. Is like a journey, but it's the first and last always. And so like, for example, with my first album, the last song that I wrote was Heather, and Heather changed my life. And then with my second album, the last song that I wrote was Memories, and then Memories changed my life again. And with this album, the last one that I wrote was Alley Rose, and I was like, this is my favorite song, and I just knew that the album was done. It's really weird. It's almost like, 2020, like hindsight is 2020. You know, you finish the album, you're like, oh yeah, that's why I needed to do that.
And then also, because you just mentioned Heather, and you've talked about this before, but the UMG has pulled their, Universal Music Group has pulled their catalog.
Yay!
And then you recorded your own TikTok singing over
I did.
the video. What made you want to do that?
Well, I kind of have no choice. They didn't ask us. They weren't like, hey, can we pull all your music from TikTok? It's kind of just been, I mean, it's been kind of funny because I have been having to think of like weird ways to like talk about my music now. But it's pretty unfortunate, and I don't know. I think it's kind of funny though. Yeah. It's like we're gonna come up with some really hilarious ways of promoting music for the next few months or a year or however long this lasts.
And I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how the album artwork came together.
Okay, so the album artwork means everything to me. The photographer is this incredible person named Elizaveta Porradina, and one of my favorite photographers of my life, and truly a huge inspiration for this album. When I was making the like original Pinterest boards for the album art, I was just saving so many photos of Elizaveta's, and I couldn't even fathom shooting with her. I was like, oh, it's like such a long shot. Like, but then I was like, I'm just gonna ask, because this whole album was about like, oh, just like shoot your shot, just like see what happens. And I asked, and she was like, oh, like absolutely. And we had so much fun shooting it. We shot it here in London, and yeah, I chose the color yellow because I knew I wanted a color that was loud and a color that I hadn't used before, and just watching her work is so special, and I feel very honored that I got to have her shoot the album cover for sure.
Do you think, I mean, you just finished this album. I don't know if you're already thinking ahead to the next album, but do you think this is like a kind of like world you'd want to stay in, or are you excited to try something even like something else new next time?
So my next album's rap.
It's a double album.
Or like what's that, grime? People here listen to grime, right? It's like every time I like talk to a guy from here, they're like, oh, what do you listen to? Oh, like grime. I'm like, what the fuck is that? So grime album next. No, I think to me, I this album was very much like I was like making this thing that's just separate from everything I've ever made, and with the next stuff, I don't know. I think also yeah, I've talked about how this album is like about a breakup, and I think a lot of people are expecting it to be a breakup album, but it's definitely not. As you know, it's not a breakup album because it takes me a while to process things. So there's only one or two songs that are even about breakup because by the time I was finishing the album, I'd only first started to really think about what had gone down. And so Alley Rose is definitely about the breakup, but then everything else is kind of about the crush and about kind of me figuring out what was going on and being really confused. And it was a very, very confusing thing that happened. I was really like lost for words and all these new emotions. So it's all about kind of everything before, a little bit in it where I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And then a little sliver of breakup.
You also worked on the album in Sweden a bit. How was that experience?
Well, Stockholm is perfect and really cool. And my best friend is Swedish, and now I have all these amazing Swedish friends. I got to kind of be a little bit of like an adoptive Swede for a year of my life, and it's incredible. I mean, yeah, I made a lot of the album. I wrote a lot of the album here in London and then recorded a lot of it in Sweden and then a little bit in LA. And I think it really did inform the album. I think it sounds so different because I made it in such a different place and a different world, and the tastes of people in Sweden and London is so different from the tastes of people in America and in the States, and it's kind of like, I don't know, it was pretty magical, I'm gonna be honest, pretty awesome. Summertime in Sweden is like crazy. It's like, you literally feel like you're like in a Disney movie. And I was really happy when I was making the album. And so the first half of the album, when I wrote that first half, it was like, I was just the happiest I've ever been in my life. And then the second half, I was the most depressed, the most heartbroken, and I was sick for like 6 months of the rest of the album. So you can kind of hear it towards the end where I'm like, please shoot me. Like, and so it was an interesting juxtaposition for sure.
Were you recording when you were still sick?
I was.
Oh, wow.
I would have like certain days where I could like squeak out words, and I would go and record as much as I could. And you can hear it in some of the songs, but it was weird. And I also like, I had to play a few shows. I was like legally had already signed to do like certain festivals and things. So I just had to like go up there and pull my little bootstraps up and sing. And it was so hard and I sounded like shit. And it was like, but it was just what I had to do. And this album towards the end was like, get her done.
Did you learn any new like singing techniques or anything?
Well, I got my tonsils taken out.
Oh, wow.
In October, November. And when you get your tonsils out, you can't really sing for about a month and a half, and then you kind of have to like relearn how to sing. So now, sing completely different, but I sound the same, but it's a very different technique, but I didn't do that until after I'd already recorded the album.
Oh. And is there anything, what do you want listeners to take away from the album?
I really want listeners to not compare it too much to the previous work and just take it as what it is. And I want people to know that I was having fun and goofing around, and I want you to smile. I want you to feel like you can just be yourself, and yeah. And then I think also I just want the album to be a reminder to people that you can be so many things all at once. You can be the most depressed you've ever been in your entire life, or also the happiest you've ever been in your entire life at the same time. And you can change your clothes, and you can change your hair, and you can do anything all the time. It's like, I think there's so much of a rush for people to find out who they are and know who they are and stick to it. I want this album to be a reminder to people that they don't have to know, and that you can be a lot of things all at once.
And I guess it's more interesting to change.
Yeah, might as well, right? Like, we're only here for like, I don't know, 60, 70 years. We're feeling good. So it's like, just fuck around and find out. Just like, might as well. Might get embarrassed a few times or something, but like, might as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.